Welcome to Options Brew TV Traders Workshop. I've got my usual guest, Mark Phillips, coming on today. Hello, Mark. How are you? He's from Harvested Financial. Look him up, www.harvestedfinancial.com. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing fantastic, Lex. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I love our pre-show routine, which is you and I talking about wine and dinners and all that kind of stuff.
Getting all the important stuff out of the way first.
That's right, to get that stuff out of the way. But you always have these great ideas. I think today is a really cool one. So I'm really excited about this. And, you know, for new viewers, we tackle some of the more, what would you say, Mark, esoteric sort of things in trading. And we're not trying to be difficult or, you know, heady, but there's some things out there that are really cool things to know that could help your overall trading strategy, right? And give you some deeper knowledge on maybe even coming up with some cool things on your own. Safe to say?
Exactly. You know, we've talked about synthetics and kind of how all those line up and how to think about the way the markets look like. And this is sort of a deep dive into a little bit of the theory, a little bit of the Greeks. And we're going to talk about theta and how theta decays over time and use that as a sort of building block to potentially build some strategies around that and take advantage of the way that theta will decay in a position.
Okay, great.
Theta is one of the Greeks that describes how your options position's value will change with each passing day. So assuming everything else stays the same, assuming spot is in the same place, assuming implied vol is relatively the same, theta represents the decay in extrinsic value that passes every day. And so if you're long options, you're going to lose value every day. You know, as each day passes and you get a little bit closer to expiration, there's a little bit less potential for, you know, that outcome to happen, whether you're long calls or long puts. On the short side, of course, you collect theta, you harvest that theta, and your position increases in value a little bit every day because your short calls or short puts are decaying in value with less and less time on the clock.
Okay, understood. So I would say, and I think I said this before in past episodes, until I understood that concept well, I never made money in options. I got to be honest.
It really changes the value of your book, right? Like vol can go up or down, but the way decay happens and, you know, it's not immediately intuitive. And that's actually exactly what we're going to get into here.
Yeah. So I agree with that. I think from my perspective in the past, for the professionals, they tended to be short premium, probably more than long. I think the firm you work for was probably a good long premium kind of firm. They understood that. We were more of a short premium firm, but had a lot of long premium folks too. And when I say premium, I mean short premium, meaning that you sell it, collect theta. You're getting short vega probably for the most part, not necessarily, but that'll be another show. But yeah, you're taking advantage of that premium decay, is what we're going to talk about. So that's what I mean when I say short premium versus long premium, right?
Exactly. And I think there are ways to make money on both sides of the coin. You know, that long strategies work and short strategies work, but it really has to be the right balance and knowing, you know, as expiration, you know, comes closer and closer, how your book's going to really evolve over time. You know, theta is an incredibly important component of that.
Right.
That graph, because I think this is the most interesting part of theta that I find is the non-linear decay of theta.
Non-linear decay of theta. Okay. Got it.
And so that's represented by this orange curve, that if theta was going to be the same every single day, you'd expect this value to be a straight downward sloping line.
Right. Okay.
But this curve where it's a little flatter at the top and then steeper towards the very end means that the beginning of an option's life cycle, so let's pick a standard option that's say 30 days out, 4 weeks out or something like that. The difference between, you know, day 30 and day 29 to expiration, not that much theta is going to come out. Still plenty of time, still plenty of potential outcomes that could happen. Very little theta is going to come out of that. But the difference between day 0 and day 1, or I should say day 1 and day 0 and expiration, all that extrinsic is going to go out. The bell rings, the clock stops, everything settles where it's at, and there's no more extrinsic value. There's no more potential energy left in this option.
Got it.
And all that potential energy really drops out in the final days, hours, and even minutes. That curve just accelerates towards the very end because as long as there's time on the clock, something could happen. And so that option needs to price that value in there.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And then we won't talk about it today, but maybe a future episode. And as you get closer and closer to that expiration, as that theta is starting to really burn, right? We also have a little gamma issue too, especially if you're short these things, right? So gamma does some funny things as well as we start getting nearer and nearer.
Exactly. Those numbers are going to explode in sort of opposite directions because if there's time on the clock and we close above strike or below strike, that's why your gamma, it just absolutely explodes because, a little bit, a penny here or a penny there makes all the difference whether you're in the money or out of the money.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, good.
And so what you can see with the blue lines is a good example of the difference between, say, the first week of an option versus the second week of an option and how that decay might happen. And so the distance on the horizontal axis, the time axis, is the same. It's the same sort of interval between the first and the middle line and then the middle and the third line.
Got it.
But on the vertical axis, the price of that option actually changes quite a bit.
Yep.
So you lose a little bit between week 1 and week 2. That week 1 decay value is relatively narrow. We're still on that flat part of the curve there. But then as things start approaching expiration, that week 2 decay, you're going to see that option lose a lot more value than it lost in that first week.
Yep. And then that last week there, or whatever that is, that time frame, it really falls off the cliff.
That's when it really falls off the cliff. And, that steep end of that curve is very steep. So, whether you're just long, simple options or, one of the strategies where you see this most significantly is in, say, a butterfly. And if you're waiting for a butterfly to exactly pin at that center strike, that value doesn't happen until literally the final minutes of trading, if at all, realistically. But the acceleration of that theta is a really important component because poof, all your value appears or all your value disappears.
Right. Got it. All right, understood. Let me bring us back. Here we are. We're back.
Hey.
So that's an important concept to know, right? Yeah, people have to think about that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a couple strategies in some of the coming episodes, but whether you're doing a covered call strategy and you're waiting for that theta to leak out, it's only going to come at the very end. You're not going to see that premium come immediately. Then it's only going to gain that value towards the end. We can get fancier and do collar type strategies and split month collar strategies, kind of take advantage of the different theta decays across the time dimension.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And for viewers, the really good traders, they have a really good handle on using theta to their advantage. And what I mean by that is you can take advantage of theta by using iron condors, by using diagonals, by using time spreads. There's a lot of ways to do this, to take advantage of that decaying option, right? You might, certain strategies behoove different sort of personalities per se, potentially. But, great traders really have a handle on taking advantage of that theta, I think.
And it's very highly correlated to volatility also. So, it's both a question of the personality and what strategies, what objectives you might have, but also the relative implied volatility of the stock.
Right.
The higher that implied volatility is, the steeper that fall is going to be at the end.
Right.
So on a relatively low implied vol stock, you're not going to see that kind of cliff experience. But the higher that vol is, it's like I like to say is as long as Michael Jordan has time on the clock, you don't leave the United Center.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right, good. Theta, I love it. And we'll add some other features relative to this in future episodes. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that gamma explosion and some of the trickiness around strikes and closing based on what the dealers might have. That causes some interesting phenomenon, around strikes at expiration time.
Exactly. If you're waiting until the very end, you only have so much time to close and capture that value. And if liquidity is not there, that's a big question too for theta management.
Yep. All right, Mark, that's all good. Well, that's a good episode. I like it. Very cool. We will see you again next Thursday, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mark. Well, thanks. That was a good episode, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Have a great weekend, Lex.
You too.